And tonight we are here to talk about an important discussion. But before we get started, I would like for us to take a moment of silence for those that are impacted by substance use disorder. So if we can just take a couple of seconds of silence. Thank you. As I stated, I'm Daynita Benjamin Miller, Executive Director for Sojourner House. And I just want to start with some housekeeping rules for you before we get started. If we're using Zoom, and I know it's 6:30 and some of us are zoomed out, right? So I just want to go over some housekeeping tips. If you have any Zoom issues, please put your concerns in the chat. You can also email me at dbenjamin at sjhpa.org. You can also again, we have people being attentive to the chat. Also, if you want to focus on the speaker, it's important to go to your Zoom view menu in the corner and click on the speaker view. This will help you focus on the person speaking. Also, we are here to answer questions. We know that some people send in questions ahead of time. We will do our best to address all of them. If you have additional questions, you can put them in the chat. We will address your questions at the end of the panel discussion. And also, any unanswered questions we will address after the presentation. And just to please, we just want to make you aware to please be advised that this is a live recording and the panel discussion will be posted on our social media page. Thank you. So as we get started this evening, like I said, it's a celebration. And we thank you for being a part of this essential discussion to discuss recovery from substance use, the realities, and most of all, hope and the possibilities and understanding people do recover. As I stated in my introduction, we're here for an essential reason. And I want to highlight some statistics that reflect the current substance use disorders here in America. Over 700,000 drug overdose deaths, or should I say drug poisoning, have occurred in the US since the year 2000. Over 70,000 drug overdose deaths occur in the US annually. Over 2 million people, or those with drug disorders, have an opioid disorder. This includes prescription painkillers and also relievers and heroin. 70% of users who try an illegal drug before the age of 13 develop a substance use disorder within the next 7 years. That's important. 53 million people over the age of 12 have used illegal drugs, misused prescription drugs within the last year. Taking opioids for a period longer than 3 months increases the risk of addiction 15 times more. Most persons in acute pain rarely need more than 7 days worth of opioid pain medication. Some of the statistics that we're seeing is marijuana use being on the rise, 46% impacting our young people as well. Prescription stimulants, 46%. Polysubstance use, where someone doesn't have one drug of choice and they may use multiple drugs. And I also want to talk about the causes of addiction. Sometimes it's genetics. Sometimes we are predisposition. It's not just with heart disease or diabetes. It can happen with substance use disorders as well. And they account for 40 to 60% of a person's risk for substance use. Environmental factors such as the home, stress, community plays a part as well. And teenagers and adults with mental health disorders are more at risk for a substance use disorder more than any other population. And the big T, trauma. 80 to 90% of persons experiencing substance use disorders have been directly or indirectly impacted by trauma. But I'm here to tell you, along with the panel, that people recover from addiction. and they also go on to do great things. This was an article published by David Eddy and John Kelly, May 3rd, 2021. And in the article, it stated that 75% of people seeking recovery from a substance use problem achieve their goal. And most important, at the end of the day, addiction is a highly treatable disorder. I'm gonna say it again. At the end of the day, addiction is a highly treatable disorder from which the majority of people do eventually recover. A recent study shows that in spite of numerous legal and social barriers, most individuals in recovery go on to rejoin society and contribute in beautiful ways, as you will see represented by the panelists today. So I thank you, and I will end with people do recover. Thank you for attending, and I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Rosa Davis, CEO of Power. Thank you.
Thanks, Danita. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you as Sojourner celebrates its 30th anniversary, 30 years of providing quality care to women and their children. And so I am from an organization called Power, and I've been there for 29 out of our 30 years, actually. So Danita and I have known each other for a while, not as long as 29 years, because I'm much older, unfortunately, but I have had the pleasure of working with her, and our organizations are kindred spirits. Power also provides gender-responsive, trauma-informed care to women who are struggling with substance use and mental health disorders. And we serve about 2,500 women each year through a range of treatment services, and we also have some recovery support services as well. So I'm going to kick us off, and I'm going to ask each of the amazing panelists to introduce themselves first. So can we start, because we may not be seeing everybody in the same order. Let's start with Dr. Stacy Ford.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I am Dr. Stacy Ford. I am a Pittsburgh trauma specialist and the CEO and owner of Kyle's Hope, which is supportive services for people with all needs. Alongside of me is my husband, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Clarence Ford. I'm a police officer in the city of Pittsburgh. And I just want to state that the views that I give are my own. I'm not speaking for the department.
Thanks, Officer Ford. So Robin, you're on my screen next to Officer Ford. So Robin Horston Spencer.
Good evening, everyone. I'd first like to thank Danita and the rest of my colleagues on this panel for having me here. My name is Robin Horston Spencer, as Rosa said. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is I haven't used any mood or mind-altering chemicals in over 30 years. That means that I have participated in this society for a long time now and given back. I have been an executive director of a well-known recovery community organization called Message Gears up in Pennsylvania. We were just acknowledged at the Pittsburgh Recovery Walk for trailblazing the many services that are still being utilized today, such as being a former workforce development of the certified recovery specialist. We gave hand into creating that. I am currently a consultant, and I am a co-host to a podcast called Revelations and Reflections, a social media for Black and Brown too. When you get an opportunity, check us out on Facebook under Revelations and Reflections. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Robin. How about Kelly? Kelly Coldren.
Good evening. It's a privilege to be here tonight. My name is Kelly Coldren. I am the Director of Behavioral Health at Familylinks, and I come today with 20 years of experience in the field, working in criminal justice, substance use, and mental health.
Thanks, Kelly. So As Danita said, our topic tonight is recovery from substance use, the realities, the hope, and the possibilities. So we're going to start with the hard part, I guess, the realities of substance use disorders. And I want to ask Dr. Ford to answer the first question, because I think it helps set the stage for the rest of the discussion this evening. You can't talk about substance use problems without talking about trauma. Dr. Ford, what is trauma and how does it relate to substance use?
Trauma very much relates to substance abuse. It's an event that has happened in your life that has caused you to change, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally. It hinders you. Trauma is, there's always an underlying diagnosis that may be untreated, that may be undiscovered when we talk about drug and alcohol addiction. They're not just using drugs and alcohol just because. Sometimes there are people that do that. However, majority of the time, it is because of something that has happened in their life that has caused them to not know how to cope. So they use drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism.
Thank you. This darn mute, unmute. Kelly, I think the next question is for you. Thinking about what Dr. Ford said and doing the kind of work that you do at Familylinks, I know that you think about this often, and I know that I do as the CEO of Power. How can treatment programs who provide services to those who struggle with a substance use disorder avoid re-traumatizing someone while they're in our care?
So treatment is a great resource for someone to navigate through their recovery journey from trauma. But it also has triggers in it, and it can re-traumatize someone because individuals are asked to explore their feelings and memories as they work to heal them. So the first step is making sure that you have a clinician who's experienced in trauma. It's definitely a vital piece of that puzzle. The therapeutic setting and the techniques that a clinician uses is super important in the journey as well. Everyone's journey is different. You know, I believe that a lot of times we assume that if we do X, Y, and Z, we'll get the same kind of result. And that's not what happens with trauma. So many people with that history have found it challenging to trust others, to develop those relationships. So it's a long-term experience in which people have to be patient, both the clinician and the individual working through the process, to progress gradually and cautiously to make sure that people are on the right journey and ready to process through those feelings. And understanding that everyone's triggers are different, and making sure that their experience is of their own, and making sure that they have a healing path that makes sense for them and they're in charge of their own treatment.
Thanks, Kelly. I know that sometimes we don't think about stigma as a trauma, but we know that stigma sadly still exists and does in fact impact addiction and recovery. So Robin, how can we as a community decrease stigma for those in our community who are suffering from substance use disorders?
Okay, sorry about that. I'm steady talking. I was saying, I believe that one of the major reasons that stigma still traumatizes one of us is because when we go for services, we have this thing that we should be capable of just stopping, just stop. And when we go to these providers, such as a hospital, the ER, or doctors needing medication, and they're thinking that we just want more dope, we're not looking at the fact that, as Dr. Ford said, trauma, we don't know what happened to the individual before they got to you. And so being able to treat them as any other illness, because drug and alcohol is an illness. It's in our DSM. It started in our DSM-4 when they acknowledged that obsession and compulsion is a mental illness. And to go to someone you're supposed to trust to service you, and they treat you at less than, that's trauma in and of itself. And then we expect them to go to other places where we already been mistreated for people who are supposed to be able to help us. I think that our community would be better served if we look at this illness as any other illness, such as diabetes. When someone overeats, they get an insulin shot. They're like, we're happy to help you. We're happy to save you. And you, Rosa, you know yourself, having breast cancer, people have cancer and they get all the help in the world. You know that. So this is a disease. If we treat it like something else, as any other disease that can be decreased, and I believe Danita said earlier, like it is doable, it is curable with the help. It's like a disease that keeps coming. And like we go into remission when we relapse. That's going, coming out of remission, going in remission. Those are relapse. So I believe if we all come on one accord and help those who ask for help, because everybody don't ask for help them when they're ready. We'll be better served as a community and a society. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Before we get off this topic of trauma, and Robin, if you can just stick with us for a minute here on this next one, we have to recognize also that inequities and discrimination are also forms of trauma. So why is it important to have culturally inclusive substance use treatment services? Robin, you're muted. Sorry.
Okay, all right. There was a button on the screen. I thought I had to go down there. This is fun. We have a lot of people of color who don't seem to get the same resources or services. And there's not enough of us people of color, like myself, Black and brown people, to service those in the field that come, as well as we don't have enough who are professionals who stick and stay because of the decrease in the lack of income for this field. We treat this field as if something off on another island, instead of putting the money up front and helping those who need help now so that they don't keep using it as a revolving door. We need more people of color. We need more recovery community organizations. We need many pathways. This disease, unfortunately, it doesn't get resolved just at treatment. Treatment is a wonderful modality, but some people do not ever hit those doors of treatment. And so we got them out here in the community. We need people who are in the community that can help them sustain long-term recovery. And we need people of color, and we need to pay the workers, all workers, to work with human beings. We're very diverse, we're very complicated, and we're not a quick fix. We're not an inanimate object, so we shouldn't be treated like one.
Thanks, Rosa.
That's pretty powerful, didn't I?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Officer Ford, we're still talking about the realities of substance use problems. And actually, when you think about this question, it also relates to trauma, because having contact with or history or experience with law enforcement or criminal justice system also has trauma involved, right? But as you think about the difficult realities of substance use problems with law enforcement in mind, as a City of Pittsburgh police officer, what are you seeing in the community?
As a police officer in the communities, I'm seeing that it's pretty much a revolving door, that oftentimes there's a lack of trust from the people that need the help, that don't necessarily want to trust law enforcement. It's almost as if we're on two different sides, and they're not as willing to trust, because oftentimes drug use leads to other crimes, and it very much involves different aspects of crimes, because oftentimes people on drugs are willing to do whatever they need to do to get it, and it just perpetuates more crime. So what I'm seeing is that when there's a reduction in the social programs and the money that's filtered into the community to help those that are less fortunate or those that don't want the help or unwilling to trust and get the help, that the drug use just runs rampant. And it seems to stay in certain areas that aren't getting the limelight, that aren't getting the attention and the resources that they need. And they kind of become drug havens. These areas are areas that oftentimes go unnoticed until worse things happen. And there's a buildup of violence and crime in those areas. Those are some of the things that I'm seeing going on right now.
Thanks. And that so fits with what Robin just talked about as well, and why it's so important to be inclusive when we're looking for solutions and trying to create communities of hope and recovery. And so you spoke so well to the realities, which can be a little depressing, but that's what we know about substance use, right? So let's move a little bit to hope. And I think that people would love to hear, because I think sometimes, as you said, it appears that we're on different sides when really we're not, right? We all want the same thing. And so what role do you think law enforcement plays or can play in helping individuals with substance use problems? And what are the ways that you have helped to inspire hope when engaging with the community?
Well, one of the things that we're doing as a police department and a law enforcement group is that it's more of a village atmosphere where it takes more than just one to help. So it's not just persons having drug issues it's just wait until the paramedics show up to help, because now our training includes firsthand first responder methods where we use Narcan. So it's not any longer where it used to be that you would just wait for the medics to arrive and treat that individual and take them to the hospital. Now you have firefighters, you have police officers, you have other first responders who are arriving on scene to give that dose of Narcan to reverse the effects of opioids, and they're getting that immediate care. In addition to that, we're now kind of being trained to not punish or give the negative attention from one side of the law, whereas we just come in and just enforce the law. So now it's to a point where we want to encourage people to get help. And as law enforcement, we're coming on scene, and we're finding when people have these drug issues and they've used drugs, and it's not perceived as a punishment. They can receive the help without necessarily being arrested, because it's more important to get them the help than it is to simply just shuffle them off down to the jail. And so that role has kind of changed, and I'm seeing a little bit more trust, a little bit more encouragement as we become a little bit more familiar with the people that are using the drugs. There's a different role that police officers and law enforcement is playing in that drug problem nowadays. And when we often come across some of the same people multiple times, there's a rapport that's built up. There's a little bit more trust. We share information with the medical community, as well as other people who are out to do more help and more canvassing the neighborhood, and people that are actually involved. And it's not just a law enforcement aspect of it, because we're all human beings. And, we're seeing a little bit more, I think, trust and involvement on the law enforcement side with people who have drug problems.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I love what you said about, when you see many of the same people over and over again. You know, in the beginning, you said that sadly people, you know, go through this again and again, and you start to see the same people. So, you know, thinking about that as a positive instead of just a negative, certainly it's sad and it's alarming, but as you said, use that as an opportunity to get to know these folks. And you just said you build rapport with them because you are seeing them so frequently. But wow, that is very inspiring. And the role that police are playing is really, really important. And that's good news for all of us, I think. Robin, those of us who work in the field of substance use treatment know how important it is to provide a sense of hope also through work with peer support, right? So there are lots of people who are struggling with alcohol and other drugs. There are some people who are in recovery, but they're in early recovery and often could use the support of someone who's been there, someone with lived experience. So we know peer support can play a critical role in helping to inspire hope. Why do you think peer support is so important, and how can we all play a part in supporting people in recovery? Unmute. I told you this. Unmute.
Yes, it's killing me. It's throwing me under the bus every time. What I was saying, I thank Officer Ford for what he's saying that the county and the city is doing now, because we, as message carriers, when we came up with the certified recovery specialist, had a reentry program that was in Allegheny County Jail, and we reduced recidivism in a year's time almost 80%, which is unheard of percentage of anything. And those were by peers. We had people going inside the jails to help them. But I'm saying before they get into the jail, like Officer Ford is saying, why don't we have people working with the police so that they can meet them right there, help them should they want to get in treatment, give them the option, go into treatment, go to jail. Give them a choice, because I don't care how high we get, very seldom do we not get an aha moment and not wanting to go to jail. Having to have peers at every place available, like the ERs, having them at the doctor's offices, having them at every location where we see people running rampant in and out, so that they can help them. We really are missing the mark, not allowing peers and certified recovery specialists to be available in corporations. They should be available on the sports levels, Steelers, the Pittsburgh Pirates, every sporting event. There should be a peer available to help someone along the way. Now they have some. Don't get me wrong, they have some, but it's hush hush. If we put a face and a voice to recovery, it will reduce the stigma that continues to traumatize us. It will also encourage others to get the help they need and not stay stuck so long. So that's my hope. I'm hoping that these things, and I know I'm missing some places, but I know that it can be done if we if we put the money where it needs to be and stop using it as a revolving door, trying to put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. We need help. We need real surgery.
Thanks. So we know that peer recovery support specialists are really critical to the process, to the recovery process. Kelly, we know family matters as well, right? So why is it important for family members to support their loved ones?
So we often hear that this is a family disease. It impacts everyone across the family who's involved in this individual's care. What we fail to look at is when, like Robin talked about, diabetes or cancer, when an individual has that diagnosis, what do we do as family members? We wrap around them. The community wraps around them. Their churches, their support groups, their friends, all wrap around them. What happens a lot of time when you see in substance use is people back away from them. And so it's just as important in a substance use, an individual, suffering with substance use, that we come together as a team, that we, that families support that, But equally, what is important is that families get their own care. And so, some family members have been traumatized through this process, no doubt. And so it's important that they have their support as well. We can't always, even in, with somebody with a cancer diagnosis, we can't always sit there and support that person without giving our own self-care. So self-care for family members is equally as important as the individual who's dealing with this, and there's a lot of support I think that people forget is out there for them. And so, it's really important for someone going through this process to feel the support of others. This is a tough journey for people to go through. There's a lot of battles that they have to go through. So families being a part of that, supportive of that, and really reaching out and kind of getting their own support is very important.
Thanks, Kelly. Dr. Ford, since we're still talking about hope, how does addressing trauma help to create a sense of hope in those who have substance use disorders and for those who care for and love them?
So first, let's start off with the fact that a lot of individuals don't even know that they have trauma or that they're suffering from trauma. So first of all, acknowledging it and understanding it makes a huge difference. One of the things that I do is I go out and I walk the communities. I work hand in hand with the police officers, but I go out and walk the communities. And not only when there's a situation, but even when there's not a situation. So we're seeing individuals, we're having conversations with them, just regular conversations as you and I would, and we're addressing the needs that they may have and how I can get them to support and get them, whatever needs they have. There are a lot of individuals out there that don't know what to ask for or how to ask for what they need. They don't know that they're in need because they have been comfortable in this situation for so long that it's just normalized. Well, with us being out there and working hand in hand, it makes it easier to be able to touch those individuals that need the support and direct them and get them where they need. So this village that my husband talked about is making it, so to speak, a new form of hope. We are changing a lifestyle. We are working on a new plan to help support those. So it's giving them more resources. We're actually being out there because, I'm a firm believer of you can't sit in the office and help someone if you're not listening to them and knowing exactly what their needs are. We need to be out there. We need to be reaching them where they are and not just where we think they should be. This is about them and their journey. So it makes a difference. So we do have a lot more hope than we've had. I know I stay busy. The police officers call me all the time. So we're working a lot to try to reach as many people as we can. We can't reach everyone, but we are reaching a whole lot more than we did before.
Thanks so much, Dr. Ford. So we've talked about the realities of substance use problems and about the hope that can inspire individuals to either begin or strengthen their recovery journeys. But what if we could create communities that really understood addiction and recovery? What if we could create recovery supportive communities? What might that look like? So Dr. Ford, what if everyone understood what it means to have a healthy community? What would that look like, and what are the possibilities?
That would be wonderful. That would be amazing. And in order to do that, we have to constantly educate, inform, lead by example, be open and willing not only to receive what someone is giving us, but to read into what they are telling us. Because sometimes they want to tell us something, but they're not really telling us what we can just hear. We need to read through the lines and understand where that trauma is and what's going on in order to help them. So it's means a lot to educate people. The police officers are going through different trainings and learning how to understand those things better and have a better understanding. Along with it, just shouldn't be the police officers. It should be everyone. It should be medics. It should be anybody and everyone that comes in contact with communities for any reason. You have to have an understanding and know the signs and the symptoms and how to refer out or be able to support them in that moment without re-traumatizing them so that they can get better. Right.
So the possibilities for transforming the way we think about and treat alcohol and other drug problems are endless. And one example of how law enforcement, Officer Ford, can partner with treatment providers to create supportive recovering communities?
Well, as a police officer, my involvement with people with drug use is, in the past, it's been limited. As we receive more training and learn a little bit more from the providers and the people that come in contact with this on a different level, we are learning also as police officers. I know that I don't know all of the signs of drug addiction and drug use. And as my wife said, reading between the lines to find out what they need. And there are still a lot of people out there that don't trust us as law enforcement because they see one side of us. We're viewed as the bad guys oftentimes because when we come in, it's usually just on that one aspect of law enforcement. But as a police officer, we are now being trained in different areas. Like I said, it kind of does take a village. Police officers are learning different roles. We're not just enforcing the law. Nowadays, it's understanding drug addiction, it's understanding mental health. The two often go together. It's understanding why this person is committing this crime. And it's taking a different approach head on into helping the community and helping those with drug issues and mental health and all different facets. It's not just clear cut. So as a police officer in the law enforcement community, we are also becoming more educated and learning more and receiving more training. And it's not just a stigma. It's not often a revolving door. I'm learning a lot. Even today, just listening to the panelists, Robin seems to be a great source of inspiration because I don't know her history. I don't know her story, but to know that she had some form of drug abuse or whatnot, and to hear her talk now, I mean, that's kind of big because if I was out on the street as a police officer and I seen Robin, I now know that I could go to her as a resource. And I know that certain people out there are going to identify with her because of what she's saying. And she really sounds like someone who's been there and knows it. So, you know, I kind of thank the panel for having me involved because I'm learning. And as a police officer, you know, we're going to continue to grow and learn different ways on how to support the community and drug abuse and other facets. So we're wide open. We're learning.
Thanks. You know, I can't help but as I think about Dr. Ford and Officer Ford together, what a combination, right? A police officer and a PhD who's an expert in trauma. I wonder, like, if there are lots of arguments sometimes, or you know, I'm sure, Stacy, you have helped to bring Officer Ford along in a lot of ways, but how great that you, Officer Ford, want to help tackle this. And yeah, this is great, but I can't help but wonder what dinner conversations are like sometimes.
We try not to talk about our days too much. We have conversations limited. Most of the time we're in each other's day anyways because of the work that we do, which makes it great. But we try to keep that to a minimum, but we're constantly, I think that's one of the reasons why we get along so well, because we're all about the community and trying to support them and work together to make a difference.
Absolutely. So Kelly, as a service provider, what do you think that we as service providers can do? How can we partner with the community? We've heard a little bit about the work that Dr. Ford does in the community. We've heard how law enforcement is really changing the way they think about their role. What about us, service providers, organizations that provide this care? How can we better partner with the community to help eliminate some of the stigma and inspire hope and remind people, as Danita said from the very beginning, people do recover?
Absolutely. So as service providers, we are in the community, but we're inside of our four walls. So it's really important that we walk outside of those four walls and we get involved in community events and that we share the hope. I think sometimes as providers, we are fearful or hesitant to share others' good stories. And I think it's very important that when we see the successes, that we mention those in our events, that we mention them in our day-to-day lives. And again, we're all here today because this is a great anniversary and September is Recovery Month, but it's our job to make it Recovery Month every month. It's our job to bring these messages every month and to have our name out there in the communities, in the news, the hope, not just the bad things that people hear about, but really kind of giving a different message.
Absolutely. I always say, there's no shortage of images of what addiction looks like, right? But it's hard sometimes to put a face to recovery. So when you have people like Robin who are willing to talk about their story, and you're right, as a treatment provider, there's no reason we can't share the stories as long as we never break anonymity and confidentiality, but the stories, because that is what is inspiring. Thank you so much, Kelly. So this next question, any of you, whoever feels inclined to answer. So who are the players we need to have at the table to achieve long-term sustainable solutions?
Hey, I unmuted myself because I really wanted to say who, as everybody, well, as Kelly just said, this is National Recovery Month. And the theme is everyone. And so when we talk about everyone, we're talking about decreasing criminality in our communities. So when we got somebody going into the Giant Eagle, it's stealing the food, it's not because they're hungry, it's because they got to find a way to feed their addiction. If we all come together and say, how can we help this person? By giving them the support. I think that our jails would be decreased if we made them more respite places for people to get the help they need. Everybody's not going to get it. That's a fact. But the realities is, and the possibilities is, we can get more people to get services, especially if we have peers available in the stores. How about a peer sitting around Giant Eagle when the cop busts that person for taking that steak? How about that? Instead of sending them to jail, giving them a peer so the peer can work with them and send them to a place such as Power or any other treatment facility. Or how about a recovery house? We need recovery everywhere we go. Dr. Ford talked about everybody needs to know some of the signs. We're so quick to label people like myself who have been, and Officer Ford, I got arrested, which was my rescue. I just want you to know that. Somebody in Hackensack, a judge in Hackensack, New Jersey, knew that I had a problem and wanted to help me. And so our court systems, they have to be more amenable. We got to talk to our politicians, because these minimum, maximum sentences, we get more people, and I believe Officer Ford could probably attest to this, in jails because of drug and alcohol, but they're not catching the bank robbers. They're not catching the people that's doing the other things that are really criminal. They're worried about and getting more overtime and getting a drug addict off the streets. We need to help them. And the way we help them is everybody, I mean, everybody under the sound of my voice, under the sound of society, need to participate in helping one recover. There's not a stone unturned of any entity that shouldn't be participating. Okay, I'm off my soapbox again.
Hey, Rosa. This is Danita. I just wanted to jump in and add to that answer. Thank you, Robin. I agree. I believe it's everybody, especially families. I have to give a shout out to my stepfather who's been married to my mom for over 20 years. and he just celebrated 13 years of sobriety. He went into treatment one time. What he did, though, he went into inpatient, he stepped down to outpatient. I was there every step of the way. I participated in family groups. I oftentimes communicated to family members that did not understand what his experience is and what he's going through. And he's a professional. He manages stores, you know, and so kudos to him for his recovery. But it's about understanding that this is a community disease, but it can also be a community success if we all work together and humanize this.
Thanks, Danita. Absolutely. And so the last question I have, and any of you, feel free to answer. You heard some comparisons this evening several times to other illnesses. Is it possible to think about substance use disorders in the same way that we think about other medical illnesses? So, you know, Robin mentioned I went through breast cancer a few years ago. And one of the most striking things for me was to see how supported I was, not just by friends and family, which I expected, even though that was much more than I ever thought I deserved or would get. But I'm thinking about the healthcare system, right? Everywhere I went, there was someone to coordinate my care. Everywhere I went, there was someone who explained with compassion and no judgment what was going to happen next. No one handed me business cards and told me to call so-and-so for the next step, which is unfortunately some of what we do, right? So is it possible, anyone, that we can get to a place where we will think about substance use disorders and treat them in the same way that we do other medical illnesses? How can we create this holistic model of care that's rooted in compassion? And what possibilities would that create?
So we absolutely need to get to that point in order to make a difference in recovery. Recovery should be treated just like every other illness because it absolutely is an illness. There is no reason why recovery is not listed as highly as every other illness. Unfortunately, it's a long journey to get there, but I think we can get there if everybody has the same mindset and we all are very determined to make this happen. So the key players, that means all of us and anybody that connects with us or anybody that has resources, we all need to stand firm and make a force for this to push so that it does become, because it's about quality of care for everyone. No matter what, everybody deserves to have the best quality of life that they could possibly have. It doesn't matter what the situation is, but they deserve it. And we're all human beings. And if it was us, we would want to be treated like that. So we should be treating everyone else like that.
Well said. Thank you so much.
Rosa, I want to add something to that. I want to add the fact that we got to talk to and really educate our insurance providers. See, we got this 2-day rule or something that, or you got to wait this long. When we got these barriers, and this is a huge barrier to cross for anyone, and when it comes to the insurance companies, they're making billions of dollars, and they're making billions of dollars because we're being recyclable. If by chance, and this is a great possibility, we can get our legislators to talk and get our insurance providers to give us the opportunity to heal in treatment when we go to treatment, or when we go to a place that we can get the healing we need and understand some of the traumatic issues, some of the reasons why, being able to talk about the things that happen, why I am this way, why am I so angry, whatever that is. But the insurance providers are a huge barrier and challenge to everything we're talking about. We're talking about possibilities. Possibilities got to include insurance providers and having them educated so that they can put the money and stop saying that people can get just 3 days and that's enough and they're healed. That's not being humanistic, as Dr. Ford said, and Danita. We're treating people like inanimate objects, as I said earlier, instead of human beings. We must talk to the insurance providers.
Thanks, Robin. So I think at this point, Danita, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're going to turn it over to John Amato from Familylinks, who's going to take some of the audience and participants' questions.
Thanks, Rosa. The first question comes from one of the questions we got from the registration. And what are some of the barriers to community awareness and understanding of recovery treatment?
So
Any of the panelists?
Anyone want to take that?
So I could say that I think part of that goes back to what I was saying earlier about what you hear out in the public is all of the bad. Like Rosa said, you see the pictures of individuals who are suffering, not pictures of people who are recovering. So I think it's really kind of turning that around and really showing what recovery looks like, helping people understand what recovery looks like, and kind of plotting that out for people and understanding that recovery isn't the same for every person. Cancer treatment isn't the same for every person. A diabetic doesn't have the same treatment for every person, and really kind of bringing that understanding to the forefront.
Anyone else?
Yes, I want to jump in on that one. I think sometimes it's misunderstood about treatment successes and that we don't do enough to measure those successes, right? So oftentimes it takes a person 2 to 5 times to come into treatment and then finally get recovery. It's not 10, 15, 20 times that sometimes is seen in the media or sometimes stigmatized. So it's important that we to understand if we give that person a second or a 5th chance, they have the opportunity to recover.
And I think just to feed on what Danita said, you know, as the board president for Sojourner Mom's House, we see people come from treatment over to, you know, housing into the moms program, and they're still struggling. It is an ongoing struggle. And we can't allow those people, the insurance folks that sit in an office and sign the papers, to dictate how this journey is going to be for this individual, because it may be reoccurring. It may be until, you know, they finally just have been sick and tired of being sick and tired before they decide that they're really going to stick to it this time. It's learning how to stick to it, having the proper tools in place. You know, people, places, and things, removing themselves. It's a whole life change for them. And sometimes it takes time. And it's not time that we can see on the paper. It's time that's for each individual.
On that note, I also want to say that possibilities when, and this goes back to insurance, when a person relapses in treatment, we realize that they are normally kicked out of treatment when they relapse. What about if we have another place for them to go, and not with the group, but so that they can get themselves back together and come back to the group and not kicked out the program? We are the only disease that actually kicked one out instead of keeping them and helping them where they are for suffering from an illness. We don't do that with no other disease. If somebody eat too much sugar, we don't keep them from getting that insulin. We give them the insulin shot. If their cancer is out of remission, we start treatment once again. We got to look at it the same way. So there's a lot, and it still goes back to insurance. It goes back to insurance and telling people, not being ashamed to tell people, you know, somebody in recovery, and we know that they are living a life to the best of their ability. Everybody has problems, not just the active addict. We still do. I still seek outside help. These are things that help me sustain 30 years of recovery. I still need help, but it's not that I have to go into a formal detox or a treatment to get the basics. I have the basics, but continuing on. We keep on throwing people out with the bathwater. It's not how it goes.
Thank you all for that. I have another question. This came in from the registration. Is there a difference between how the community treats females and males who are in recovery treatment? And I'll just throw that out to the panel.
So I want to take this one.
Okay.
If I can. Obviously, Power is a women's organization, so we were established specifically to provide treatment designed for women, just like Sojourner House, and I know Familylinks has women's programs as well. And the reason we do is because absolutely there are differences, right? I always say to people, the differences, the issues that women face aren't more important or less important than men's. They're just different. And you don't have to be struggling with addiction or be in recovery to know men and women are different, right? But when you think about the stigma that already exists for people who struggle with alcohol and other drugs, and then you think about it, because both men and women, of course, they face that stigma every day. But when you think about women, think about what you yourself have heard, right, in the community. So you hear or see a man who maybe drinks too much, then that's what you hear people say. Oh, he just drinks too much. He gets a little crazy when he drinks too much. Or, you know, he didn't always use, he's got a lot of problems, right? You know about a woman who's struggling with addiction, and what do you hear? She's a bad mother, right? And a lot of other very derogatory names that I won't use, but we've all heard them. She's promiscuous. She's a bad mother. How could she do that? Unfortunately, even when an individual is getting help, you can see differences, right, between men and women. Did you hear about John? He just went into a treatment program. Isn't that a wonderful thing he did for his family? Did you hear about Susie? She went into treatment. How could she leave her children? I always think about when we ask women when they're coming into treatment about their childcare arrangements and so that they can come into treatment. I wonder if we ask men the same question. So of course there are differences. Again, they're not more important and less important, but they're different and they need to be treated differently. When you think about trauma in particular, again, men are victims and survivors of trauma. And yet the numbers, the statistics will bear out that more often women are survivors of trauma and victims of trauma. So that's what I have to say. I can go on about that one.
Okay.
Hey, John, can I just one more thing to add with
Thanks,
her
Rosa.
list?
Thanks, Rosa.
John, can I give her one more thing to add to her list?
Absolutely.
A major difference is if a woman is out prostituting to find a way to get more, when she gets arrested, she gets penalized, whereas she no longer can work in the field with children. She is really ostracized because of the prostitution. Whereas the guy, he may get a charge, but he doesn't lose his rights to work with children. He doesn't lose his rights to be a caretaker. See, a lot of times women get their children taken from them. So yes, there's a major difference between men and women. Just wanted to add.
I appreciate that, Robin. Thank you. Here's a question from Susie, who's with us tonight. Does it help or hurt when I give money to people who ask, have signs on the side of the street? I think the assumption is, do I give them money or what? Because, you know, are they going to use that money for drugs or whatever? And I'll open that up to the panel.
Well, from a law enforcement perspective, as long as that individual is not obstructing traffic or creating a public safety hazard, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I, as a police officer, see these people out on the street or on the sidewalk and they have a sign up and they want money. And I don't find anything criminal about it. And you never know exactly what they're going to do with their money or whether or not they actually really need it. I think that as an individual, And I just this week gave someone some money, and it was what I felt in the moment. I didn't know whether or not that person was going to use it to get high or get a drink or whatnot, but it just made me feel good at that moment to help someone who potentially needed help. So I think it's an individual thing and how you feel in that moment. It really doesn't matter what they're going to do with the money. There's no way for us to figure that out. I think it's just a human thing to do, that in that moment, maybe possibly you just want to help someone. So I think it's more of a human quality than worried about what they're going to do with it.
And maybe they didn't eat that day, so maybe they do use that dollar to go get something to eat, and at least they've eaten one meal.
And I wanted to add to that as well. I think that it's important to understand nobody wakes up and say, today I want to be an addict, or today I want to experience substance use, or today I want to sell my body, or today I want to hustle and so I can get enough money to get high. Some addictions, you end up going through withdrawal, and the withdrawal is so severe that you just need the substance so you can just end those symptoms. And with alcohol, it's so severe that a person can die from alcohol withdrawal. So oftentimes when you see someone who may be experiencing alcoholism and they ask you for $1 and they're shaking and they got the tremors, it's because they need to drink so they can stabilize their body. And so that's why community education is so essential and important.
Thank you for your responses. I found this question interesting, and this came in the registration. Is there a difference between how the community treats females and males who are in recovery treatment? And I'll just throw that out to the panel.
John, would you repeat that question before I try to answer it?
Sure. Is there a difference between how the community treats females and males who are in recovery treatment?
I would say absolutely, because of the ignorance, I would say, of the people in the community, believing that we as addicts, or recovering addicts at that, are less than because we have done things. They never look at the things they've done because they didn't use drugs, but they probably using other things. But yes, we're looked down still. And if everyone would just look at their own issues, but it seems to be very easy for you to look at mine than to look at yours, because everybody got something that they're dealing with. But the fact that drug and alcohol is such a bad thing is not even listed as an illness to people who don't want to see it. And then we have family members who say, well, you know, case in point, example, I had this aunt, God bless her soul, she's deceased now. I was on the cover of a magazine. Now, she knew my whole life, my addiction, my recovery. When I showed her the picture of my picture on the magazine, you know what she said? She said, "Who would put you on a magazine? This is my aunt, my mother's baby sister. I had been clean maybe 20 plus something years." And that's the response. Some people, because of the way they want to see us, they will always want to see us as less than someone who has moved above and has risen to a place that I believe the God of my understanding allowed me to come. So we can't change people's minds. We can do better and hope that they do better by living and sustaining our lives. This is why I always say, my name is Robin. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means to me. I don't want to forget that there's too many people coming behind me that need a hope shot. And for people to look down on me, they will, and I can't change that. So I just gave you a personal reason of how a person that I love dearly can look at me even in a good moment.
Thanks, Robin. So the only other question I have from folks who have asked questions in their registration, what are ways to get involved to help with harm reduction in the community? And again, I'll open that up to the panel. What are ways to help with harm reduction in the community?
I think a big way is to be consistent, to be in these communities, to walk these streets. When you see organizations having walks or saying that they're going out to feed the folks in the community or reach out to the folks in the community, sometimes just being there to say good morning or how you doing today makes a difference to someone who's going through something. You know, just a smile. You might not even have to say anything. They might not even talk to you, but knowing that you're there and it's consistent and you're not just there because something's happened, you're there because you really care and you want to be a support. It makes a difference. You know, I know for myself, I'm out there. I'm in these communities. I'm not afraid to be in these communities. I'm not afraid to walk these streets. There's probably times that my husband would say I shouldn't be walking these streets, but I'm out there walking these streets and I'm reaching out and I'm talking to folks. Doesn't matter what they have going on. They could be, you know, huddled over in the corner under a tree and just took, you know, a hit of some crack, but I'm still going to talk to them. I'm still going to engage with them because you never know. It might be something in that moment that decides to make them change and say, hey, I need some help. Can you help me? And I wouldn't not want to be there when someone is ready to make that change. So I'm going to continue to keep being out there and keep reaching out and keep supporting. And hey, did you eat today? You know, when's the last time you washed up? How's things going? You know, you need some socks. I do drives. I do all different types of things just to be that support. And it's not just me, it's everybody. I think we all need to take a stand and stop sitting back saying, hey, we want to know more, or we want to be involved, but you're not being involved. We have to, and that goes from individuals to politicians to, you know, people in big time offices. We all need to be involved and be consistently involved. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a day or two. You got to be consistent, and you have to be that person that has that smile on their face and is welcoming and is engaging no matter what their situation is.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ford.
I agree with Dr. Ford. One of the things I just want to say real quickly is about Narcan. You know, Robin used to walk those streets passing out Narcan, and she had water bottles with the message carrier number on there just in case someone needed help. But if you learn how to administer Narcan, you can save a life and you're protected under the Good Samaritan law. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Danita. All right, so I think what we're going to do now is open up the room and entertain any questions that any of the participants have.
So anyone have questions? This is your opportunity. Anyone have questions, more questions? Any more thoughts from the panelists?
Okay, I do have a question. As we have this panel here and the various backgrounds, I'm curious to know, because I thought that my wife said something that was important. Just thinking about myself and reflection. I'm going into my 20th year of law enforcement, and I'm thinking how things have changed and my perceptions have changed as far as users and people in recovery and addicts. The education is important, because I think that the more we educate and the more that we talk about it and discuss it and put it out in the forefront, oftentimes I think that this whole drug use thing is shoved in the dark. It's in areas that most often people don't want to go into, these economically challenged areas that don't get attention, where the light doesn't shine, so to speak. There aren't very many politicians and people of that stature that are willing to talk about it and discuss it. It's kind of like a taboo. But I want to know that how does that look for us to be able to educate and to bring more attention to it, so that it's not a taboo and it's something that's discussed readily, and that people feel more comfortable talking about? Because I'm kind of equating that to the differences in athletes, people that we celebrate, celebrities, things like that. When they become addicted to something, you know, we celebrate them and we want to surround them and give them all the attention and all the support and wishes, best wishes that they need. But when it's these common people out on the street that don't have any bearing on any entertainment value or anything, we all have family members that are touched or affected by drug or alcohol use. And, you know, we don't stop supporting them as family members. But when these people are out on the street, we don't want to look at it. We don't want to identify with it. But when it's a celebrity or someone else of that stature, we treat them totally different. And I think that more education and more focus on that in the development and getting it out there into the general mainstream, just the regular people, not necessarily people with money or people with stature. I think that it could become a more common thing that we could look at, not like as a taboo, and want to reach out and help people and not shun people and kind of get them the help that they need. So I want to know, how does it look for us on the panel? What can we do to educate and bring more awareness to it and make it a more common thing, so that we want to be able to get the discussion out there and we want to help people and we want to identify with them and understand what they're going through?
I'll take a shot at that a little bit, and then anyone feel free to jump in. When Kelly was talking, she mentioned the importance of as a way to help break down the stigma. And it's the same thing, because the stigma is often what gets in the way of offering help, right? So Kelly said, you know, tell the stories of recovery. Don't be shy about that. And I think we all can do that. You don't have to be a treatment provider to have those experiences. Just as you said, Officer Ford, we all know someone. We've all been touched by it, right? Whether it's a friend, a relative, close or not. So we all have those stories. And I always say to especially new board members, you know, you're ambassadors. You're ambassadors of the organization, but you're ambassadors for the entire recovering community, whether you're in recovery or not. And so your job is to help tell the stories. And, you know, for people who have not had any experience, which is hard to imagine, like you said, I think we've all been touched, but someone who hasn't worked in this field maybe, or hasn't had a ton of experience with people who struggle with substance use, I still know that in everyday conversation, whether it's because you just heard a story on the news about a mother who was arrested because her child was left in the car while she went to get drugs, or you hear about, often unfortunately it's related to criminal justice issues, but you'll read a story, you'll hear a story, someone will tell a personal story. It's so important to counter those stories with the positive as well, right? Millions of Americans are living their lives in recovery. as Daynita said when she opened, not only is recovery possible, it's a reality. So I think one of the things we can do to get people more on board with wanting to learn more and wanting to be part of the solution and wanting to help educate is talk about what we know, and not just what addiction looks like, but what recovery looks like. I think that's one of the best things we can do to help break down the stigma and help get the community more involved. But if all they hear and all they know is all the negative, and they don't know that, you know, someone is living 30 years in recovery, someone has 10 years in recovery, someone has 15 years, someone has 2 years. If they don't know that and they don't know who folks are, then they don't know about the possibilities.
I would like to add to that. When I think about our systems of care, I think about how in this area, my experience is we want everything for little, for less, when it comes to people with the disease of addiction. And I guess I'm singing a song, but it's the truth. If we really want to help and not perpetuate what has occurred, we have to do different. This same status quo that's been going, at least my last 30 plus years here in the system as a provider, has to change. Our systems of care have to start being a system that cares, and stop trying to minimize the humanness of a person to what they can equate with the economic growth of their pockets. It is hard, but we have to change, and we have to really address our systems of care. They are not up to standard, according to Robin Horseman Spencer. I think that, I don't want to say everybody else thinks this, I'm just speaking for myself, because if our systems of care were really a system that cared, we wouldn't have so many barriers to help those that we care about. And it wouldn't be only if. And those who get the real help are people with the economic resources, and those people like myself, who the fair weather friend, thank God for having a system that cared enough to say she needs help, and this is how we're going to do it. And I had 2 years to get the help I needed. I don't know, that's unheard of today. I had 2 years to get the help I needed. And within that 2 years, yes, I relapsed. Yes, I didn't follow the orders. But in 2 years, I was given it before the light came on for me. But there was a system that cared.
Thanks, Robin. So I think that this is probably a good place to end. Some good questions, great panelists. Thank you so very much. And I want to turn it back to Daynita, who will always do a wonderful job of reminding us of the hope and the possibilities.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you to the panelists, and thank you to everyone for attending tonight. And I hope that each and every one of you have learned something. And remember that everybody has a story. So just keep that in mind when you're engaging someone who's experiencing a substance use disorder. I want to say thank you again for attending, but also for celebrating, Recovery Month, but also most important, helping us kick off our 30th anniversary celebration for Sojourner House, is serving as a beacon of hope for women and children who have been impacted by substance use disorders. So with that, I just want to say, have a good night, have a peaceful night, and remember, each one, teach one. Thank you.